Hi, I'm Jeff Walter, and welcome back to the Training Impact Podcast, where external learning meets strategic impact. My guest today is Emily George. Emily is the Director of Strategic Partnerships at KTA Financial Services. Prior to KTA, she was the Director of Membership at the International Franchise Association and a Senior Client Coordinator at the Franchise Business Review. So Emily knows a little bit about the franchise industry, just a tad. So Emily, thank you for your time and welcome to the program.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's fun to be here.
Yeah. So, Emily, I always think of us as accidental tourists. We end up someplace unknown in our careers. I, for one, and the listeners are probably sick of hearing this, but never thought I would end up in Michigan. Started off in New York, headed south, thought I'd never see snow again, except when I was skiing. And here I am in the winter wonderland.
Yeah.
And I love it. I've been here 25 years. And so, totally accidental tourist here. How'd you end up at KTA? And just tell us a little bit about that journey and how you got where you're at and how much fun you're having
Yeah,
and
I
what
think
KTA does.
sure. I think like so many people, I kind of fell backward into franchising. So I actually went to college to be a high school history teacher, did my student teaching, spent a year in the West Des Moines School District, had a wonderful time doing it. And then my now husband and I relocated from Iowa to Ohio, and I decided to not pursue a continued career in education. And, like my mom's famous last words after growing up in a restaurant family were, do anything you want, just don't go into restaurants. I went immediately into restaurants, and I had a wonderful 15-year career in hospitality. I was a professional bartender. I was a competitive bartender. I got to travel the United States doing really fun, very cool things. And one of my regulars at the last restaurant I worked for was, at the time, the president of Wendy's International.
Oh, wow.
And a few years after I had officially left hospitality, I had exited a tech company and was looking for the next thing to do. And I called Daryl, and he had just bought a small restaurant group that he wanted to operationalize and prepare for sale into the franchise space.
Hmm.
So I went to work for Daryl and his business partner, and they knew nothing but franchises.
Okay.
They operated everything like a franchise. They spoke franchise language. They were so steeped in franchising. And I learned so much about the business model and the industry from those two folks that it then kind of propelled my entry into franchising as a long-term career. It ultimately took me to Rev Local and then Franchise Business Review, the IFA, and now KTA Financial, which has really been the perfect marriage of everything I've learned in franchising to date, and now a very equally franchisor and franchisee facing opportunity to help make a really significant impact for individuals and systems who just need financial clarity. So it has been a very backwards route into franchising, but a wonderful pathway. And I'm so excited to be with Jonathan and Gil and the team at KTA now.
Yeah, it's as you were telling that story is really interesting. You just jumped over this. So I was a professional bartender doing competitive bartending, which I've never heard of before. So I want to ask you what is competitive bartending, just for my own knowledge.
So I think when I say it, a lot of people immediately envision Tom Cruise and the movie
Yeah,
Cocktails,
yeah, yep.
bottle flipping, and there is a very competitive space for flair bartending. I was not that kind of competitor. There's a
Okay,
whole different space in competitive bartending that is recipe based and technique driven. So there's a
okay.
very specific method for how you prepare competition cocktails, how you present them. It's a whole thing.
And it is, I know it's completely off the line, but these are the rabbit holes I like to go into. Is it quality based or speed based? Like if it's not the flair based, right? I get that.
Right.
That's more the showmanship type of thing. Like the other thing is like, oh, I can prepare 100 old fashions in less than 10 minutes, right? Like,
Sure.
is it, or you have a competition, who can get the 100, Cosmos,
Sure.
that,
Yeah.
or is it like that the elevated, like, or is it both? Or is it like, I've
Yeah.
never heard of anything like it.
It's usually some combination of those things. Like at its core, there's a standard for you have to make a certain number of cocktails within a certain amount of time. And it's usually making 5 of the same cocktail in a certain amount of time. And there's a way to do it between 2 shakers across 5 glasses. There's a whole scheme behind that. But then there is also usually an element that you have created this recipe and you are submitting the recipe for judging as well.
Oh, interesting.
So it's kind of a twofold thing,
Yeah, yeah. It's supposed to. It's not a drag race,
right?
but you can't sit around forever and daintily preparing these exquisite things that take 15 minutes to produce one cocktail.
I
You know,
mean,
so it's
yeah,
commercially relevant, right? Because you got to be able to do it at a certain pace,
absolutely.
but then the creative freedom to be well, this is Emily's cosmopolitan
Right.
or old, and it's got and it's got a certain signature profile on its
Yep.
on the taste. So
Mhm.
there's the quality. I'm not surprised, but I never heard of it. And
Yeah.
so I want to take us down that. But then you just skipped over, and then I went to work for a tech startup, and then I ended up in franchising. I'm like,
Right.
how do you go from bartending? So if you're doing competitive bartending, you're obviously hip deep in the culture.
Hmm.
Did you go to the tech startup, and then it's like, okay, now you're more in corporate America, and
Sure.
and then getting into franchising, you know.
Yeah.
But what made the jump from bartending to tech startup?
Yeah. So for me, it has always been people.
Mhm,
And it was the same bar where I met Daryl, where I met another gentleman who was creating an app that
mhm.
became the predecessor to Postmates.
Okay.
So we were a regionally specific concierge delivery app before the idea of having stuff delivered was really a thing. And Webb had always kind of joked like, someday we're going to work together and someday we're going to do something together. And there was a day that it was finally possible. And he kind of took a bet on me and offered me an opportunity to help build process and procedure for that app. And it went really well. We had a whole lot of fun doing it. It was a whole new world to me. I met a lot of new people. And one of the people that I met through the Wentz app project
Uh-huh.
was building a boutique web design and development agency that put some of the first stores on Shopify's enterprise platform.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So when that kind of became a real thing, I then moved over to that agency and I was kind of like that startup catch-all person. I
Mhm.
was the first W-2 employee that was then responsible for hiring all the contractors to become W-2 employees. And like I was the HR person when we needed an HR person and the this person when we needed that person. And it really just helped me to build these skills of taking everything as it comes. And the
Yeah.
business is what it is today. And there's a plan for where the business is going to go in the future. How do we get from point A to point B and keep things going in the middle? Huge, incredible learning opportunity for me. And again, like continued building relationships and networking, and it just always comes back to the people for me. It's
Yeah.
who do I know? Who have I met? Who have I built a relationship with that kind of creates the next opportunity and the next thing?
Well, I heard somebody say, well, it used to be like, it's not what you know, it's who you know,
Yeah.
but that's incomplete.
Yeah.
It's you have to have the competency and then is the ante into the game.
Yeah.
And then having a bunch of network it helps tremendously.
Yeah.
But and the cool thing, yeah, go ahead.
You have to care enough about them to
Right.
know something about them and what drives them and what they're doing, and then share enough about yourself that it makes that connection interesting. And you can kind of find those strings that bind you together and kind of take things to the next level. But if you're not interested in people, if you don't care about getting to know them at all, they're never going to get to know you in such a way that a really meaningful connection can happen.
You could 100%. agree. The other thing you said that was really interesting was, and I think it's people, especially young folks or folks that are entering a field, don't
Mhm.
appreciate is going to work for a small emerging company. Because I'm not talking about a small mom and pop business that has a street corner. I'm talking
Sure.
about a business that's at ground level and it's going somewhere. Because there is, and having been an entrepreneur myself for over 20 years now, you're trying to get somewhere. There's an unlimited number of things that need to get done,
Mm.
and you don't have departments of people to do it. You know, when
Yep.
you're larger, $1 billion company, it's like, I got a marketing department with 100 people. I've got a sales team with hundreds of people. Everything is, I have hundreds of people that do this thing,
Yeah.
and they're really good at it,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
But as you're emerging, as you're going from that, and climbing,
Mhm.
like, I don't have a marketing department with hundreds of people,
Mhm.
but but I got Janae, and
Sure.
she's wearing this other hat, but
Yeah.
she's really good at content creation, right?
Yeah.
And if you grab the bull by the horns, which it sounds like you did, like you're that person. Well, gosh, just listening to your story, you sound like that person. As somebody that wants to get into an industry, it's a great opportunity to
Yeah.
get experiences that you would never get in a larger corporation, because there's so many things that need to be done in a small emerging company. You could,
Yep.
it's basically just take, accrete whatever responsibilities you want to and
Yeah.
experiences you want to have, and you can really leapfrog your career
Yep.
because you were given the opportunity to grab onto something that, quote, you weren't qualified to do,
Really.
but other than your tenacity and industriousness, so it's
Well, and
interesting.
I feel like some of that may come from so I graduated college in 2005. 3 years later, 2008 happened
Yep.
and the economic crisis that was. And at the time in 2008 I was just starting my career in hospitality, in restaurants, and becoming dedicated to the idea that like that's what I was going to be doing for the foreseeable future.
Hmm.
And if there was a time that the economy turned around and circumstances were different, it was never going to be like that there was a one perfect job for me out there. I was going to be creating whatever the job was that I was going to take on. Like, and having that mentality and that mindset of like, there's no one perfect job description. That may be the case for someone out there that they can read a job description and say, like, that's me. That has never made sense to me. That's never washed for me.
Yeah.
It's more been about like, what weird thing can I kind of get into and then create what needs to happen? What is the pathway? And leave behind me jobs that I love giving away parts of my job. I love,
Right.
that practice of creating something that didn't exist before, giving it
Yeah.
away so I can create the next thing. And I don't know if it's really correlative to kind of coming of career during an economic crisis, but it just never felt to me like there was going to be a specific job that I could just step into and do that specific thing. It
Well,
was going to be kind of creationist.
yeah. Well, I think that's really excellent career advice for individuals. And the other thing that's really, as you were saying that, I've always felt you grab that responsibility. I had a mentor once that said, if there's a job you want, start doing it now.
I love that.
And like, but I'm not the manager of blah blah blah, or I'm not the senior designer of blah. He's like, you just start
Right.
doing the things you want to obtain.
Yes.
And if you're in any type of merit based organization,
Mhm.
you know, uh, you'll be recognized, and you'll be elevated there. And he goes, and it's like the complete opposite of what we're kind of taught, which is like, to get from here to there, I have to accrue all of these accreditations or experience or whatever the boxes you have to check are.
Right.
And then and only then can you do that thing. And he was like, if there's a job you want, just start doing it. Now you won't have the perks that come with it. You won't have the salary that comes with it,
Sure.
but but it'll be so apparent if you're any good at it, which you won't be at the beginning, but you will become because it's the interest. You'll get those perks and that compensation
Yeah.
because you'll be doing the job. And
Mhm.
if it doesn't happen at your current employer, you go to the next guy and you go, I've been doing that for 3 years.
Yep.
And you'll get compensated as somebody who's been doing that for 3 years.
A
And
hundred.
and then it remind and we're kind of way off topic, but these are the rabbit holes I like to go down, and I'm having a lot of fun. But it also reminds me of this book I read years ago called First Break All the Rules. I don't know if
Ooh.
and it was the folks over at I forget what the big polling agency was, but anyway, they studied high performing organizations
Hmm. Okay.
and what makes a high performing organization. And is it the charismatic leader, is it this, is it that, market opportunity, like all these different dimensions. And the interesting thing is, and it goes back to the name of the book that they ended up publishing, was we tend to take an engineering view to an organization. And it's
Yeah.
what and it's the pigeonhole thing. It's the and I call it kind of the HR mindset, but I don't mean that in a derogatory. It's like, I have a marketing assistant. A marketing assistant has these responsibilities. They
Sure.
do A, B, and C. In order to be a good marketing assistant, they have to have these experiences, X, Y, and Z. Hire somebody that does that. And then when the person becomes a marketing assistant, we do the annual review and we say, hey, Emily, you're really good at A and B, but you're not so good at C. So let's give you training and other things to help you, you know, get better at C. And they said, that's not how high performing organizations work at all. What high performing organizations do is they have those guidelines. It's not anarchy. They
Mhm.
still have marketing assistants in that, but they hire you and they still have, requirements to get hired and all that kind of stuff. But then they go, hey, a marketing assistant does A, B, and C, is supposed to do responsibilities A, B, and C. Emily, you're really good at A and B, but you're not so good at C. We're going to take that off your plate. And we're going to add D, which has nothing to do with a marketing assistant, but you're really good at it. And
Right.
and they basically mold the job to the strengths rather than try and create renaissance people,
Mhm.
which is the whole theme of the book. Was we're trying to create renaissance people that can do all these things. And really what you want to do is play to the person's strengths and mitigate their weaknesses by removing responsibilities associated with their weaknesses.
Yeah.
And if you do that systematically, you end up with a very that's the key. It's
Yeah.
not charismatic leadership. It's not having bright product. It can be, it's it's basically play to people's strengths, which sounds
Right.
so obvious, but it's not what we do. And the
Yeah.
cool thing, I've never thought about it from this perspective before. The cool thing when you were telling about your thing is like, that's the individual version of that.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, I'm going to accrete these responsibilities because that's what I want to be doing and I'm good at and I have a knack for it. And I'm going to, but with it comes the other part is I got to hand off these other responsibilities.
Right.
And that's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're at KTA.
Yes. Here we are.
Yeah. So what does KTA do? KTA Financial Services?
Yeah.
What do they do? Why do clients ask them? What do clients hope to achieve when they hire KTA for their services?
Yeah. I mean, it's the sexiest thing in all of franchising. We do bookkeeping and accounting services for franchisees. So it is, and it was, there were many things that drew me to KTA when the opportunity came up.
Mhm.
And kind of to your point, one of the things that really struck me at its core, it is a phenomenal offering. We talk so much about level economics and franchisee success in the franchise space. Like, this
Mhm.
is where it starts. It starts with financial performance and profitability. So, at its
Right.
core, it is foundationally a great product. And then talking to the founding team, one of their first comments to me is, there are no sacred cows here, which is a phenomenal mindset when you're still growing a business. Like, foundationally, yes, strong product. Are there still opportunities to improve this product? Absolutely. And that's a beautiful cross point for me. So franchisees tend to find us when there isn't a solution within the system that they have invested in to
Okay.
get good financial clarity, to just get foundational bookkeeping and accounting services. Brands tend to find us when they haven't put in place structure for good financial practice within their system. And they have grown to a point where it has started to get out of control and they can't manage, 20 different chart of accounts and profit and loss statements that come in 6 months late. It becomes really hard to coach franchisees when you aren't coaching from the same playbook. And again, all of that starts at financials. Is the unit profitable? Why or why not? And if you just have no line of sight to the books, it's not good for anybody. So KTA provides that financial clarity with on time profit and loss, balance sheet, and we integrate with analytics systems so franchisees can see analytics across the system.
Yeah, it's that's it's really interesting. And when we talk about scaling, well, I started off my career building accounting systems as a developer for oil and gas companies. Shell, Exxon, those guys.
Mhm.
So accounting goes deep through me.
Sure.
But I thought I found it really in, as I've been getting more and more into the franchise space and understanding it more and more. We talk a lot about the acquiring customers and closing deals and servicing them and building the processes for that. And what's started to merge as I talked to, over the years, as I've talked to more and more people, is the average franchisee tends to have limited financial acumen. They've never managed a P&L before,
Right.
and managing a P&L is very, very different than managing your checkbook.
Yes.
It's they're apples and oranges, right?
Mhm.
Still money, but completely different way of doing things. And as it's interesting because as I've talked to more and more people, and I'm prepping, I was asked to do the scaling workshop in November next. No, I get next February. It is November,
Mhm.
but I'm trying to figure that out and going. There's this, and I like the way you said it. It's foundational. Is that there's this financial knowledge that is foundational, and as I talk to my franchisors, to your point about the brands not addressing, it's like either they're like, well, we're looking for a good fit, and we we're getting the right types of people, but
Sure.
it's one of these things. This is one of those areas where they're not bringing the knowledge, and we don't really train them on that, and especially if you're like a developing franchise, like you're so focused on the bits and bytes of your thing that
Sure.
this is a more horizontal fundamental thing, and they struggle. And then I was talking to one franchisor that was really interesting. They recognize the problem. They don't try and this is the Training Impact podcast, which we focus on training.
Mhm.
They weren't trying to train them. They solved the problem by saying, here's our partner.
Right.
You have to use them for the first year.
Mhm.
After that, you can use whoever you want for keeping your books and doing your financials and all that other stuff. But you have to use these guys for the first year because we are all trying to just turn you into a successful business.
Right.
And so let's not worry about this.
Mhm.
Let's just bring these partners in. You got to use them. After a year, you can do whatever you want. I was like, huh, that's a really interesting way of solving the problem.
Yeah.
Is you go, I'm not going to require you to do it forever. You know, like I'm not married to the CEO's sister. But no, this way to your point, like we get our financials. You don't have to worry about it. I know you don't have your brother-in-law's cousin doing it for a nickel a day, and they're crashing on your couch in your basement. Like I know I'm getting and it creates that foundation. So I thought it was really interesting what you said. It's just fascinating.
Well, and I think one of the beautiful things about franchising is that it really does offer a pathway to business ownership for so many people to whom it would otherwise not be available. When I think about
Yeah.
the number of franchisees I have spoken to throughout my career, and like yourself, one of the questions I always ask is kind of like, how did you find franchising? How did you get here? Like, what did you do before this? And how did you choose this franchise in the end? Like,
Mhm.
those pathways are as varied as the people that come with them. And sometimes it is, you know, I've always been a beautician. And so the idea of owning a salon
Right.
concept felt, like they're kind of into the widget of the business.
Yeah.
Or I've been in corporate America, I've been doing these things, and I've just always wanted to own my own business. So I found my way to this concept, and I believe that it's the most financially viable. They come in a number of different ways, but very rarely is the franchisee an expert in the widget, an expert in being a business owner, an expert in all of these things
Yeah.
they need to do to ultimately operate the franchise. And to your point, the franchisor is really only responsible to train you on a limited scope of the business.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is not their responsibility to train you to be a financial wizard or to train you to be an HR pro.
100.
And so there's this like very fine line of how much does the franchisor provide? Where does the franchisee fill in gaps? And it's exactly where suppliers come in and become the third leg of the stool that gives structure to franchising. There's the franchisor's responsibilities, the franchisee's responsibilities, and suppliers that fill in the gaps and help make all of the magic happen and connect the dots.
Yeah. Well, I think I see that pattern over and over as I talk to folks, and you nailed it right on the head. There's a bunch of skills that are necessary to successfully run a business.
Yep,
And, some of it's the you got to understand the market,
for
because you're
sure.
how to find prospects, how to close deals, how to deliver the service,
Yep,
how to manage people, how to keep a good set of, there's a lot of different hats. And usually folks are coming in that are really good at one, maybe two of those hats.
sure.
But then there's all the other hats. And,
Yep.
I
And
was
they're
talking,
dealing with, like making an investment into a business and they probably borrowed from their from K
yep,
or taken out a loan. And there is price sensitivity to opening a business. But again, finding that balance and, we experienced it when I was at Rev Local and it was marketing and nobody wants to spend marketing dollars, but everyone wants to see the accounting for every penny of marketing spend. And nobody is a marketing expert that decided to become a franchisee. So, like, I
right.
kind of saw that cycle first at Rev Local and have continued to see iterations of it. And it continues to be true in the bookkeeping space because, yeah, like everybody's got an uncle or everybody's got a
Right.
somebody in their ecosystem that can do the books.
Yes.
But are they really doing the books with a lens of understanding franchising, understanding your specific business, keeping things in line for the system? That gets to be a different thing. And all of a sudden, you've got 50 uncles doing bookkeeping and a system that can't make heads or tails of any of it.
Well, and the other thing, and I think this is underplayed by a lot of folks, just in general, to say nothing of the franchise space, is that's just keeping the books.
Oh, sure.
The books are not some type of compliance thing. They're actually a tool to help you manage your business. And so, like, getting good books is just step one,
Right.
but then it's also understanding, what are the books telling me about my business, and how do I take that as input to proactively manage the business.
Yeah,
And uh, and that and to so to your point, like, if you've got, you know that step uncle's cousin doing it,
sure.
it even if you have a decent set of books, like, you still got to learn. The average person still has to learn, how do I interpret this, to say nothing of a balance sheet. Like, yeah, we're just talking about the profit and loss statement. Then there's a whole balance sheet, and what does that mean, and how do you change what you're doing? Like you're saying, like, you'll micromanage the marketing
Yeah,
spend, but what do you, instead of, like, well, no, I'm going to spend 5% on, or 20% on, or 30% on this
Mhm,
thing.
mhm.
What metrics am I putting in place to feel comfortable that I'm getting a return on my investment?
Yep.
It's interesting. One of the things that, and this is from I thought of this in the training space, but it's generally applicable. And I thought about, that's really interesting. I never thought about that. So most training programs are viewed as a cost of doing business,
Sure.
right? Like, I got to do this. Everybody expects it, but it's not a strategic investment,
Mm,
and that's how most people that run their programs, they're like, well, I get this budget from, my organization, and I'm asked to do whatever I got to do, and I do it within this budget, and then every year I go ask for a bigger budget, right? Because there's this infinite demand for knowledge, and I finally started telling my clients, I'm like, look, you got to understand the executive mindset, and this is something interesting. I never thought about this, applying it to franchisees, but you got to understand the executive mindset. Executives only do one thing. Like, we think they do a lot of stuff. I've been an executive for a long time.
mhm.
We really only do one thing: allocate money. That's all we do,
Sure.
And we sit there and go, hey, this year we're going to spend X dollars on marketing, Y dollars on my sales team, Z dollars on my production. I'm just putting buckets of money out there. And
Sure.
the executive mindset goes, there's really only two things I spend money on: stuff I gotta spend money on because I gotta,
Sure.
you know, either from a legal compliance standpoint, or just everybody expects it. And it's just the cost of doing business, right? I have to have a call center because my customers have to call. I
Right.
gotta file my taxes. I have to have it. I have to have my books done, or else the
Right.
IRS is going to yell at me, right? Like, there's things I just gotta do.
Mhm.
And then there's strategic investments, and they tend to be, and that's where I put $1 in and I get $2 back,
Sure.
right? And so to me, the challenge for, on the training side is, well, how do you go from, cost of doing business
Mhm.
to strategic investment? Or for anybody, how do you go from one to the other? Because on a
Yep.
strategic investment, if it's $1 in, $2 back, that's where the executive wants to put her money,
Right.
right? They want to spend as little on the have to cost of doing business and as much on the
Mhm.
investment, because that's where they get the returns. And so it's interesting, because I was saying, I haven't I didn't think of this in a larger sense of what you were saying with measurable returns, like on marketing,
Mhm.
is, well, that's where the rubber hits the road. It's like, I'm going to spend 20% or X dollars on marketing. It's not about scrubbing and micromanaging every nickel. It's like, what do I hope to get from that money? Am I going to get 100 leads? Or am I going to get a
Sure.
thousand people through my door? Like,
Right.
what am I hoping to get? So
Right.
it's interesting to, I never put the two together. I want to talk
Yeah.
about it in terms of training. So
Sure.
thank you for helping me connect the dots there. That was cool. So if you were an emerging franchisor, right? You're somebody, we're on the Zor side of things. You're somebody that had this idea. You saw this need in the marketplace. You got your couple of company stores where you have really fleshed out the idea, and now you're franchising and you're starting to, you know, and it's something that's hitting the market. The market's like, yes, 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 I want this. And so you start, selling franchises, and now you're kind of on that upward slope, but there's only a handful of you that actually know what's going on, and your time, there's just 100 people pulling at you. What are some of the lessons learned that you've seen that, both from the financial side, but then also from the other pillars:
Yeah.
acquiring customers, closing them, delivering the services,
Yeah.
that are, how do you get from, a couple of franchisees that bought into you, the
Mhm.
carrot,
Oh.
their belief in you as a franchisor,
Yep.
to the two location where they don't really know you,
Mhm.
but they know of you. They don't know you
Yeah.
as the franchisor. What are some of the lessons learned you've seen there as you get from A to B?
Yeah. So I think very similar to the conversation around how franchisees kind of come to your brand because they're passionate about the product or they just want to be a business owner. I
Yeah.
think it's equally the case with franchisors. Oftentimes, founding franchisors are really passionate about the thing,
Yes.
whatever the original product is. They are that thing first. They were a dog groomer or a salon owner or an in home care provider. They were that thing first. Now they're becoming a franchisor. And that is a whole, like the transition from founder to franchisor is a wild transition that not everyone can or will make gracefully. And the more a franchisor can embrace and have an awareness of this new role that they are taking on and the new responsibilities, because it's not about, like one of the things I learned so clearly from working with Paul Rocchio at the IFA
Hmm.
was it's not about the widget anymore. It does not matter if you are flipping burgers or grooming dogs or whatever, you are a franchisor, and that's the business you are in. You are in the business of franchising and
Right.
providing that service to your clients who are now franchisees. And the faster a founder can make that transition and accept that responsibility and take it to heart and start getting really serious about putting the structures and systems and suppliers in place that will help their franchisees grow, the better off they will be. One of
Hmm.
the things we see far too often is we started franchising the concept, and the lawyer told us that we needed to have tech fees and marketing fees, and we needed to collect royalties, and the lawyer told us we needed to do all of that.
Yeah.
Well, it's in our FDD. It's in our franchise agreement, but we don't do it. We don't collect the marketing fund. We don't collect the tech fee. We don't enforce expectations on our franchisees. And now we're 10 franchisees deep and we have to rein this system in.
Right.
I heard a really fascinating, like a very funny thing at
Interesting.
the FBR summit recently where compliance has a PR problem. And like there's a lot of conversation around compliance in franchising. And when compliance has to get to legal letters and cease and desists,
Hmm.
nobody, like, don't let it get there. It doesn't have to get there. If you reasonably enforce accountability in your system from early on and provide franchisees with reasonable tools and partners to help them do the things they need to do, you can make compliance a pretty happy thing in your system and something that helps drive, that competitive spirit in your system. Like, I love a system where franchisees want to beat the biggest guy in the system. Like,
Yeah.
that's really fun and it's motivating for people to drive towards a higher achievement as opposed to just like just ultimate stress. I need to keep my doors open tomorrow and make payroll on the 15th. Nobody wants to be there. And then to have compliance conversations on top of that. Like, let's help compliance have a better PR image and just make it a positive experience from the beginning.
And can you elaborate on what you mean by compliance? Because a lot of people will hear that and think governmental regulatory compliance. So when you say compliance, what do you mean by compliance?
Yeah, so there's certainly the government regulatory compliance aspect of franchising, but then at a more micro level within a system, there is compliance to the franchise agreement, compliance to the operating manual. There's the compliance of the franchisee to comply to kind of the rules of the system, if you will. So whether it is submitting a profit and loss statement by the 15th of every month or
Hmm.
using, executing a certain number of dollars or a percentage of revenue in marketing spend in a certain time period, there are requirements outlined in the agreement that franchisees have to be compliant to. And it's ultimately the responsibility of the franchisor to hold them accountable to those things because franchising is truly the rising tide that raises all ships
Right.
or the wave that sinks them. And if the franchisor doesn't hold
I
every
had heard
franchisee
that.
accountable, it sinks the system pretty quickly.
I've heard the rising tide metaphor. but I haven't heard the wave that sinks everyone. That's I got to write that down.
There you go. That's the gift, this podcast.
Uh, Well, it uh, on the compliance side too, and I think it goes back to your compliance as a PR problem. And it's interesting because I see this in the training sector,
Mhm.
in the learning and development sector, especially when you're training external partners, right? And, like the franchisees. And it gets back to that executive mindset thing. If it's like, you must have people that take the franchise agreement says that you have to have 4 people that took this training and 3 people that took that training and blah, 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 blah. Then the partner looks at it as like, it's a box I got to check. How can I do this in the least annoying way as possible
Right,
and just get my box checked, right?
right.
And then I'm not going to really focus on checking the box unless somebody's complaining to me, right?
Sure. Yeah,
And but one of my clients, it was one of the big automotive OEMs here on the training side. They spread throughout the universe of their network. A certified salesperson sells twice as many vehicles as an uncertified salesperson. A certified service technician has this higher performance and customer satisfaction than a non-certified. So,
sure.
Mr. Dealer,
Yeah,
I can't force you to get these people certified. I don't have that carrot. I have a couple of carrots and a couple of sticks,
yeah,
but to your point, I can't force you to be compliant and have everybody trained. I can just tell you this. And then
yeah.
training goes from a compliance thing to well, if you want to, I don't know, have a successful business, you might want to look into this.
Absolutely.
And the things that you're talking about, I think it goes into that too, is,
Yeah,
you know, the governmental compliance is one thing. We just live in a society and it's got a set of rules, and, vote differently if you don't like those rules. Right.
yeah,
But, or lobby or do whatever you want to do, get those rules changed. But
yep,
when we're within a system, we're all there voluntarily. And, and it's when those compliance things are viewed as check boxes that you have the issue,
yeah,
and it's, well, what is the value of that thing? Like,
yeah,
what is the value of the marketing spend? Where do I get value out of, like,
yeah.
and I think that's interesting. Okay.
Well, if you're willing to, or if you have to distill your business down to compliance and checkboxes, you are missing so many opportunities
uh-huh.
to really value add in the business. Like, what a shame when you have to get so stick driven that
Right.
you just don't have any carrots. And like, just don't let it get there, and kind of keep it in a space where you are driving more performance than having to just check boxes to get through.
So, and I think there's an interesting balance too, because it's that we need process, but we want to avoid bureaucracy.
Sure.
And it's not obvious where one ends and the other begins, right?
Mhm,
Because the franchisee is buying into a business model,
mhm.
which ultimately, and you want to make sure you get the right fit of people and culture,
Yeah.
that there's a good fit there.
Mhm,
But ultimately, it becomes a set of processes and supporting technologies
mhm.
and suppliers that end up driving the value through the process. And that's what they're buying into. Otherwise, they just go start their own business. Right.
Yep.
And the compliance is really following the process. And the more you understand about the process and the value that the process brings to the table, the more, and that's where I loved what my client had done is like, I'm just showing you the value of the process. I'm laying out the process. I'm making it as easy as possible.
Right.
But more important, I'm showing you the value so that you want to do that because it's in your self-interest to do that.
Right.
Because I guess what I'm taking away from an emerging franchisor would be, I would almost say, like, maybe as a rule of thumb, it's better to have less process than more, so you don't get into the bureaucratic, but make sure you are holding everybody accountable to the process you have. And I
Yeah.
think in whatever dimension,
Yep.
because I think what the tendency to do is to say, "Oh, that's a good idea, add it to the process. Oh, that's a good idea, add it to the process."
Sure.
And then it becomes more bureaucratic and more of a straitjacket.
Right.
And then people are like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that.
Sure.
I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, does that do you think that makes sense or?
Yeah. I think that makes really good sense. And it's that adherence to accountability that gets everybody. At the beginning, you are attracting usually your family and friends or people who are passionate about your product, and they tend to be the hardest people to hold accountable.
Right.
And it's so easy to just say, you don't have to do that now. That's going to be like for the real franchisees when we get there. Like, that's going to be for those guys. But then all of a sudden, you find yourself on the 15th franchisee and you're still not holding them accountable to the things that are supposed to make your system run. And then all of a sudden, you can't validate the brand and you don't really have proof of concept and you can't write an item 19 that makes the lick of sense. Like, that accountability from the get-go. It doesn't have to be the most complicated system in the world.
Right.
You just have to have a system and stick to it.
Yeah. And I would suggest and keep it as simple as possible while
Right.
still getting the outcomes from the system that you
Yes.
as the franchisor wants to get. And I love what you said earlier, that circle back around, that when you go from founder to franchisor,
Mhm.
you're no longer in the business of the thing, you're in the business of franchising.
Yep.
And that I'd say if you're on that emerging, developing franchisor, is something to meditate on. Like you
Yeah.
really like when you are no longer the founder of a thing that delivers this amazing service or product.
Yep.
You are the owner of a set of processes that do great things for the world.
Yes.
And you're bringing people and you're convincing people to share in that process, do well, part with their hard earned money,
Mhm.
do well financially while still doing good things in the world.
Well, and it's often the case that founder franchisors are learning those lessons at the
Right.
same time franchisees are learning the lessons of becoming a franchisee.
Right.
So, like, now you've got this layered challenge of a franchisor who's learning how to be a franchisor and a franchisee who's learning how to be a franchisee. And the franchisor has never been a franchisee and they don't necessarily know how to talk to one another. Yes, keeping things simple, bringing in expertise where you lack it, having just an awareness of the things you don't know. And how can you fill those gaps as quickly as possible to help scale your system?
Yeah. And you just remind me of something else. I love these back and forth because I learned so much and I cross pollinate all this stuff in my head. You just remind me of something else when you said, bring folks in or bring suppliers in.
Mhm.
I had another, and this is recently, person I hold in high esteem. And I was, I'm a business owner and I run my business. I've been
Mhm.
doing it for a while and I think I know what I'm doing. So,
Right.
but anyway, I was talking about this one thing and this mentor of mine, person I hold in high esteem says, Jeff, it was related to the business, right? It was like I was focusing energy on this thing that wasn't right. I needed it to be right. I'm doing this, that, and the other thing. And she goes, Jeff, you're the owner. You have so much more valuable things you can be doing with your time than that thing. She goes, just go find somebody to do it. Like,
Yep.
and it wasn't like seminal to the culture and core of what our LMS and
Sure.
yeah, it wasn't something that's like at the heart of what we do and our value proposition to the world. It was
Mhm.
like this tangential thing over here. But I had like gone down that rabbit hole and I'm like, I'm spending hours trying to figure out, how, should we paint the walls blue or purple? Right. And she's like, just get a design, like, and then, the advice was something like, just get a design consultant and they'll tell you what color to paint the walls. Like,
Yep.
stop wasting, you got so much. And so I think that's part of that learning to be a business owner
Mhm.
as a franchisee
Yeah.
is your time, the thing you don't have in, in abundance is time.
Totally.
Your time is a valuable quantity,
Mhm.
and you need to focus it on the highest value added things ever.
Yep.
And like you said before, actually, it ties back to what we said at the beginning. And you need to offload,
Yep.
whether it's to a staff member or a supplier,
Yeah.
those things that you can do,
Sure.
but they're not adding a lot of value
Right.
because your time can be applied to these other things
Yep.
that can create so much more valuable for your business. It's interesting. So I've been doing this for like decades, and
Yeah.
this was like somebody, and I fall into that trap. I
Sure.
fall into that trap. And
Yeah.
somebody who has never run a business and only been an employee, like
Sure.
those folks escaping the corporate world
Mhm.
or that, or even the artisan who is always the artisan within a larger framework,
Mhm.
it's it's I'd say it's another one of those important scaling lessons is like and I love your going from founder to franchisor. Like that's a great way of on the scaling without sacrificing is
Mhm.
coming to peace with you decided to be in a different business.
Yep.
Yes, you're still making the widgets that you love.
Sure.
And yes, your heart will be in the R&D or in the lab or in
Sure.
the kitchen, depending on what you're doing,
Yep.
figuring out the next iteration of this thing you love, but you're not in that business anymore. You're in the business of helping people become business people,
Yeah.
which is an amazing thing. And once you get that on your head, there's so many more valuable things you can be doing,
Totally.
and you have to offload those things or lower.
Yeah. There's a great article that I still share pretty regularly, and it kind of first came onto my radar when I was working in the tech space, and it's about giving away your Legos. And the idea is that when you're first in an organization, when it's a startup, when it's an emerging brand, everybody has access to all the Legos. So I have every Lego shape, every Lego color. I've just got a big box of all the Legos. But as the company scales, you now have to start sorting the Legos. And first you kind of sort it into colors, but it's still all sorts of different shapes. But I have to give all the white Legos away, or I have to give all the green Legos away. And it's really hard for people to do that when you've had all the Legos. When
Yeah.
I've had access to everything, wait a minute, but like, you want to take all my white Legos? Can't I just like keep some of the white Legos? Like, it's this whole push and pull tension going from this emerging brand where you've done everything and you've worn all the hats to now becoming a little bit more siloed and giving away the Legos. And then you even get into departments and okay, like now you're in the white Lego department, but you only get the 2x3 bricks. This
Right.
person gets the 2x2 bricks. This person gets the long skinny bricks. Like it's uncomfortable for people. And it's an article that I share with a lot of folks just to say, you're not the first person who's felt this way. You won't be the last person who's felt this way, but you need to get comfortable sorting and giving away your Legos.
Is that the name of the article? Giving away your Legos?
It's something about if you search Medium for giving away Legos, I'm sure it will come up.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
check that out.
it's a
I
good
like
one.
those things. That's a good one.
It's like a
That's really good.
5-minute read, but it's such a good analogy for that feeling and to kind of take it back to that like childlike innocence of this feels uncomfortable to me. I don't like this feeling, but now I can rationalize it as a professional
Yeah.
and handle it.
Well, and then it's like if I build on that analogy, it's like, and that's the only way to build a huge Lego
Yes.
sculpture
Yes.
because you got to get into the specialization. And if everybody's touching everything,
Hmm.
that's fine if it's the six of you around the dinner table.
Sure.
Not so fine when it's 3,000 people spread across the continent.
Yep.
And the only way you can get the 3,000 people spread across the continent is if you got the white Legos, I got the blue ones, she's got the red ones, and then I've got a
You
team
know
of
how they
50.
fit together.
Yeah, yeah,
You know that they have to like the white Legos and the red Legos and the everybody still has to talk to one another, but I don't need to know everything about all the things.
Yes.
I need to know enough to be dangerous, and then I need to let people do what they're really good at.
It's interesting that talking about scaling latitude, um, had similar type issue, which was like, there was this history or this where everybody got CC'd on everything.
Yeah.
Right. And then it's like we grew to a point, I'm like, I started and everybody would as a CEO, everybody would CC me on everything. And then I basically I was at this one point where it's like only CC me if there's something you need me to do.
Yep.
Other like, and it was throughout the organization because like it's the Legos.
Sure.
Everybody was getting every email for everything,
Yep.
but as an FYI,
Sure.
but which is fine when you're like half a dozen people,
Yeah.
but not when you're 600.
Right. Right. It's a fine method of communication when you start, but
Yeah,
at some point it becomes not a fine method of communication. And you have to recalibrate that and then create the structure for now we're using Slack or we're using Teams. And
right.
here's how you keep me informed on a certain situation. Here's where you need to draw me in to be a part of the conversation. But if you haven't kept me informed, you can't draw me into the conversation. And you start kind of layering in a little bit of complexity, but it's just enough guardrails to keep things going until you hit the next level.
Yeah, and that's where I think we get back to the prior conversation of with the franchisor franchisee, that founder franchisor has to have that mindset of I don't have all the Legos anymore. I decided to franchise.
Hmm. Yes.
And so and in doing so, I'm giving away all the blue Legos. And so I don't get to play with the blue Legos anymore.
Mm.
And then as the organization grows and I have a chief revenue officer, I don't get to play with the red Legos.
Yep.
And then I don't get to play with the yellow Legos. And then I don't like, and then those people are like, okay, I got the green Legos, but now I've got it. I'm a franchise group or I'm using an area manager model. And now I'm not just the guy with the franchise in Ann Arbor. I'm the area manager for Michigan.
Sure.
And I got to give away some of my Legos because I'm no longer just the guy running the Ann Arbor franchise, right? I have this additional responsibility. I got to give away those other Legos
Mhm.
because I can create more value, and it all
Yeah.
circles back around to that. It's funny. It all
Mhm.
circles back around, but yet doing it in a way where you have to have those processes have to be as simple as possible so that they're understandable and not bureaucratic,
Right.
which is where the green Legos and the blue Legos come together,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
like we're still building this beautiful statue that
Sure.
has all the colors and all the sizes,
Yeah.
and so we have to have a process where it's like it's your turn to put the blue Legos there. It's my turn to put the green Legos here,
Yeah.
right?
I think people who have worked with me for any length of time start to get sick of hearing me say, I love an exception to the rule, but there has to be a rule first. And it's because I've been in so many situations where it's like everything is an exception, but it's not. It's not. It just like, everybody thinks their particular circumstances, the first time it's ever happened, ever in the world, it's not necessarily the case. And yeah, just we are not all totally unique snowflakes. We have to have some sort of guardrails, some sort of guidelines, and then there can be exceptions to those things on occasion.
Yes, and we are all unique snowflakes, but you got to operate within that realm.
Sure, we have so much more in common than we don't.
Yes, no, 100%, 100%. But if we're coordinating, we have to operate within our area,
Sure,
and it's so okay. So going back to the key thing on scaling, it's like let's get processes in there, make those rules as minimal as possible,
sure.
but yet still have structure
Yep,
because it's the structure that your franchisees are buying into.
yep.
Make sure you get the right people,
Mm,
and then going back to your first part of the conversation is like also you know you know financials drive everything. And if you don't understand that, first off, you got to compile them. That's the ante into the game. it's not even the game, it's the ante into the game.
Yep.
Because then you want to use those to make decisions,
Yes.
and then you have these rules or processes, technology, and but make them as simple and non-bureaucratic as possible.
Yeah.
Don't add, almost add things in very judiciously,
Sure.
because you want to be, because the flip side is you want to also enforce the rules.
Absolutely.
And the more complicated the rules, the more complicated the enforcement, the more you're going to spend energy on enforcement,
Mhm.
or let it slide, which is
Yeah.
more the case, until something bad happens, and then nobody
Yeah.
knows what's going on because it's arbitrary,
Yeah. You
right?
have so much to unwind at that point that it's hard to even get to a base level. But if you just start with the acknowledgement that the financial performance of every business unit matters
Right.
and put focus on unit level financial performance, build that into the foundation of your business, and then so much can scale around that when you have good financial clarity.
I think that's, I think that's just great advice for life, period.
Right? Once your checkbook
Much
like,
less a business.
uh-huh. Once your checkbook, don't just
Uh,
assume the money's in there. Like, do your
yes.
books, like,
Yeah.
regularly and on time and professionally.
Well, and use them as tools to manage.
And let's do it.
That's the and that's when it goes from compliance to you're denying yourself a tool, you
Yes.
know, like and you're driving blind.
Yep.
That's the like I'm not an accountant, I'm not a bookkeeper. I
Sure.
built accounting systems, so I understand them.
Mhm.
But to me, when I first became a manager and started running practices, consulting practices and my own business, I've always been very accounting driven and books driven, not as a, oh, we need to get another point of margin out of that or blah blah blah,
Mhm.
but it's telling me a story about I successfully
Yeah.
delivering my value to my customers in a way that is sustainable in the long run.
Sure.
And and when when the story is yes, it's like your stress levels go down,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know, uh, you're on a good sustainable path,
Right.
and and then you're like you said, you're using it for, I'm putting $1 in here, I'm getting $1.50, I'm gonna put $1 over here because I got to pay the lawyers. I need lawyers to write contracts because I don't know what I don't know,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And so I'm spending money on the cost of doing business. I'm spending money on my strategic investments. It's telling me a story that's sustainable. Life is good. Or it's telling me a story that says, hey, something's off here.
Sure.
You need to start rethinking some things. And I think that's
Right.
awesome.
Well, and ultimately, like, for all the franchisees I've ever talked to, I've never met a franchisee who became a franchisee to lose money or break even. Like, every franchisee I've ever talked to is doing this because they want to build wealth for themselves. They
Right.
want to create an asset that they can eventually sell for more than they put into it, or they're trying to create generational wealth to have something that they can leave to their family. And if you don't know that story, if you don't know what the books are telling you, you're going to get to the end of that agreement and have an asset that you don't know what it's worth.
Right.
And that's a terrible spot to be in. Those are the hardest conversations to have with franchisees who have gotten to this point of they need or want out of the business in some way, shape, or
Yeah.
form. And they can't realize the value of the asset because they don't know.
Right. Or they thought it was worth $1 and it's really worth 50 cents.
Well, I know
Like,
I've put $500,000 into it, so I should at least get $500,000 out of it, but
yeah.
there's not $500,000 of value in the thing.
Yeah. And that's, yes. And then you're like, oh, I put a
That's
half million dollars in, it's only worth a quarter million.
that's a
Uh,
bad spot to don't be in that spot. Don't let your franchisees be in that spot.
yeah. Yeah. And I would say the other corollary to that, which is very closely tied, is a lot of owner operators are relying on the value of their business for their retirement.
Totally. Yep.
Just like most people, I'm a huge believer in home and ownership. and I'm a huge believer in business ownership. Like,
Yeah.
I think those are two of the best things you could do with your life
Yeah.
because they build assets and
Yeah.
wealth and everything. But it also creates, well, that's a whole other podcast about, but it's more metaphysical. But
Yeah.
but it's, there are so many, most folks end up buying their homes,
Mhm.
and it ends up being the largest asset that they own after, 30, 40 years. And then when they go into retirement, it becomes this giant wealth nest egg.
Yep.
And a lot of business owners I know, whether they're franchisees or just independents, owner operators, that they they feel there's an asset there, and they're kind of betting their retirement on it without really knowing whether it's worth a buck or a nickel. But it's like you said, well, I put a 500,000 in, it should be worth at least 1,000,000,
Right.
right? So I'm betting on 1,000,000, and then somebody goes, it's worth 300,000. And they're like, what? And then the sad thing is it happens at a point in time where you're thinking of retirement, you don't
Yep.
really have the clock time,
Yep.
the calendar time to sit there and go, how am I going to come up with that 700,000 that I was expecting to retire on?
Yep.
Like, at least with your house, you can go to Zillow and go,
Sure.
it's worth about 450,000. Maybe I'll get 440, maybe a 470, but I'm not going to get 200. Right.
Yeah.
And,
Mhm.
and with businesses, you can't really do that. And especially, to your point, it's like, you definitely can't do it if you don't have solid financials, because the first thing any buyer worth their salt is going to do is say,
Uh,
show me your financials
Show me
for
the
the
book.
last 3 years.
Show me the books.
Show me the books.
And when you can't, that's a tough spot
Yeah.
to be in. Someday maybe it won't surprise me, but right now it does still surprise me when we run into franchisees who manage their business based on their checking account. And as long as there's money in the checking account, they keep running the business. That's how you end up in that situation of looking to realize the value and realizing that the value isn't there. And I would love to see franchisors and franchisees all make the decision that they want to know now and know regularly the financial health and position of their business and use that as a tool that can help them realize the value they want to. And really, like, more than that, I
Yes.
want it to exceed your expectations. Like, let's start having those happy accidents where your business is worth more than what you thought it might have been,
Yes.
but
Yes. And
for the right reasons.
yeah, well, that gets into using it as a tool to steer the ship
Mm.
rather than looking at it in terms of, this is what I see in the rearview mirror,
Yep.
right? And then get proactive about it, which is where you got to go.
Yep.
Well, Emily, this was just fascinating, really interesting. I now know there's competitive bartending,
Right?
and which is really cool. But what a really cool journey you've had, and thank you for sharing all that knowledge and insight. You spent so many years in the sector, in the franchise sector, and I think for a lot of our viewers out there, it's applicable to others. The franchise sector is a very specific legal expression
Sure.
of channels,
Mm.
but most of our viewers and out there are they have large channels.
Sure.
Now they might be dealers, they might be resellers. It's whereas franchises are specific type of legal relationship,
Yep.
but it's a very similar problem set.
For sure.
It's a very similar problem. How do you make sure you get good resellers?
Mhm.
And how do you vet them, and how do you scale your resale network?
Yep.
And it's this it's a very similar problem. The franchises is interesting because it's a more intimate relationship because it's a
Right.
legal bound. It's a marriage versus
Oh, yeah.
dating.
Yeah. Well, and a 10 or 15-year franchise agreement is longer than a lot of marriages. So it's a very, very connected
And it
relationship for sure.
yeah,
Mhm.
and it tends and actually survives a lot of marriages. So,
Right. It does. It does. Mhm. Yep. It does.
but thank you for sharing that
Yeah.
and helping educate me and everybody out there. I
Yeah.
greatly
Thanks for
appreciate it.
having me.
Before we go, if somebody wanted to learn more or follow up, or you got these great insights, how would they get a hold of you? Where do they go?
Yeah.
What's a good way to get a hold of you?
Yeah. So I'm pretty easy to find on LinkedIn. I am Emily George, CFE on LinkedIn. You can also shoot me an email. I'm emily.george@ktafinancialservices.com.
All right. And if they were interested in KTA, ktafinancialservices.com.
That's
Well,
it.
great.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Emily. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This has been fun.
Yep. And to everybody out there, thanks for listening. We had another fun episode, another fun time, learned a lot, and we'll see you next time.